All right, so this is the San Antonio Tarot Study Group. We are talking about this evening. We're talking about this evening justice, which is depending on uh, to whom you're talking. It's either the eighth trump or the 11th trump in the major arcana, and there's reasons for each positioning. Um, Originally in the Marseille tarot, it was the eighth trump, and so because of that, Aleister Crowley adopts this for his tarot, and people who are sort of partial to Thelema, they adopt that as well. And so, in a number of the cards that we'll look at, um, relative to just and versions of justice that we'll look at this evening, you'll see either 8 or 11. Um, Arthur Edward Waite in the standard Waite Smith tarot, which is the most common tarot, and it's the one that's been around since 1910 ish, right? Has it as the 11th trump in part because you have in the number 11 you have the balance. You have 1 1 or one reflecting one. You have in that imagery of the one and the one standing together. You have the two pillars that are present in the high priestess card. Of course, you have the image of balance with the as above, so below idea, or as within, as without. You have the scales, right, which is in most justice cards. In fact, I think the scales are in all but one of the justice cards that we'll look at this evening. Um, Justice typically deals with the idea of um, understanding on the one hand, i.e., self reflection, self understanding, brutal honesty about the self, in other words, um, uh, brutal self examination. And then with that self examination comes action. So it's self-examination balanced with action. So once we have that self-examination, we can then take action. And it isn't an action that's a rote action, right? That's something that is we do it's active principle versus reactive principle. In other words, rather than react to everything that happens to us and just kind of be knocked around by the energy or the ideas or the people that just kind of pound us into one area of life or another. It's an active, um, uh, creative, if you will, action, right? That's what the justice is calling us to, uh, after having undergone that very necessary, and frankly very painful, right, self-examination. So um, it's interesting that it calls us to call into question both that self-examination and then that creative action. uh, Ask us to call into question that which is being fed to us, right? um, be it sort of this meme reality, if you will, this meme culture that we inhabit, right? This sort of soundbite TikTok, um, face value culture that we inhabit, right? Um, it's calling us not to be zombies, right? Not to be Walking Dead, literally, because one thing that is devoid in a zombie is creativity. Zombies are not creative, right? Zombies, they're just not. And they might be cool looking or whatever, but it's not by virtue of their creativity. And it's also calling us not to be quote unquote robots, right? If you look at the beginning of the 20th century, when the term robot actually came about, it did not um, it did not denote a mechanized being, right? It did not my companion, is being reactive at the moment because she senses humans that she did not. I know I'm embarrassing you, Nut Nut. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm embarrassing you. Okay. She senses humans that she did not give permission to be in her general area. Now she's upset with me because I embarrassed her. But anyway, um, so no, but the term robot, right? It originally meant um, one that doesn't think for oneself, one that doesn't think creatively, right? One that does not think critically, and ultimately the justice card. That's what she is asking us to do, because for one, in the original justice versions of justice, justice is not blindfolded. She wears a mask, but she's not blindfolded. So justice is although justice is completely impartial, right? Justice is brutally honest. Justice is not blind, in the traditional sense. Um, so we'll take a look at some justice cards here in a minute. But the idea of justice is that after having undergone um, intense self-examination on the one hand, and understanding that we are responsible to a great degree for our past, right? And to be quite frank, there are elements of our past for which we're not primarily responsible, i.e., if we're abused, if we're, uh, if we grew up in extreme poverty or uh, or what have you, right? We're not responsible for that, and so forth. However, we are responsible for whether or not we want to confront that within ourselves or not, or within our past, right? And how we want to confront that. And if we're going to allow that, frankly, that damage, that violence done to us, if we're going to allow that to define our lives. And in some cases, right, that that examination requires assistance, right? Whether that be from a professional, uh, from clergy of some sort, from a mystic or what have you, right? Um, but we are responsible for whether we will passively allow that violence done upon us in the past to define who we are, right? So in that sense, we do make our past, right? Or um, we are responsible for how our past influences our lives at present, because we can choose whether to address it or not, right? To acknowledge that certain things have occurred or not. Um, and so the idea in the justice card is that once we understand our past, because we understand our role in it, right, then we can be free of it, right? And once we're free of the past, we can then balance that scale, right? So uh, once that scale is then balanced, we can then take action, right? So that is what the Justice card is ultimately calling us to, is to take action once we've begun to balance that scale. For that scale to continue to be balanced, we must act upon our understanding. Rachel Pollack talks about this as and potentially an active participation, an active dialogue in a question and answer type of initiation, right? Um, it's or more accurately, the beginning of that question and answer. The actual initiation will occur in the next card, the Hanged Man. But justice paves the way for that. Interestingly, the justice has a very intimate relationship with the fool. So we talk about the tarot. We have talked about the tarot as the fool's journey, right? So the fool begins at trump zero. In fact, the fool being zero means that he can actually be placed anywhere, right, within the sequence of the cards. And so actually the fool has a relationship with each of the trumps. And some of the early decks, very early decks, will place the fool actually at trump 22. We'll put the fool at the end as opposed to the beginning, with the idea that a journey may take place right at any particular point. It can begin either, and at the end of one sequence through the cards, one doesn't just cease to exist, one actually begins another sequence. So actually the beginning and the end, an ending is actually the beginning of another sequence. So the beginning and the end are actually the same, if you will. Anyway, the Hebrew correspondence for the fool means ox. It's, the Hebrew letter that corresponds to that traditionally is related to the ox. The Hebrew correspondence to justice is the ox goad. So in other words, the justice card is moving the fool along. It has a catalyst effect on the fool. In some places, it's referred to the fool's energy being given structure. Okay, so let's move along at some of the images here. Our guest who was on has left. I hope I didn't say anything offensive. Maybe she just had something to do and departed for the evening. But in any case, let's just see here. Oh, I need to rearrange my screens because it's not giving me the option to share the screen I want. So let me just take a moment here, very briefly. No worries, no worries. Here we go. Okay, let me just pop this on real quick. Screen share. Okay, so here we have justice very clearly being depicted as the goddess Athena. This is from the Mythic Tarot. This is the image that Denise used for our event page for tonight. And here we have Athena pictured with her owl and so on. Interestingly, she's not wearing armor here, but anyway, this is these next two cards here are takes on the Rider-Waite-Smith versions You have the upward pointing sword here. This is, of course, reminiscent of the Ace of Swords, meaning intellectual power, power of the mind. Um, we have the scales of justice here. Again, we have the two pillars, reminiscent of the high priestess. It's often um, said that the one of the things that Rachel Pollack points out in the 78 Degrees of Wisdom is that the Justice card has the iconography of the magician and the high priestess um, combined, because the high priestess, if you recall, was inner knowing or intuition or a deep connection with that which is hidden, right? Um, Feminine power, if you will, the goddess Isis, etc., right? Um, that which is behind the veil. Um, Here we have we have justice, Justitia, God, and so forth. We have her standing in front of the veil. We have, and so forth, holding a sword and so on. So she has the qualities of the high priestess. At the same time, she is, in particularly in this image, she's ready to take action, and action, of course, is the purview of the magician. um, Here we've got Robin Wood's version of justice. She is, again, holding the sword. We have her seated in the traditional manner. Interestingly, she's wearing the red of the emperor here. I'm pretty sure that this is on purpose, because it said that the emperor is law sort of writ, sort of in the outer world, if you will, and so on. That idea of service leadership that we talked about, that justice is law internally, and again the implications of how we have dealt with who we are in the lives we've lived, right? So again, there's also a relationship between the emperor and justice as well. Right? Um, Interestingly, in a lot of numerological systems, and again, I'm no expert on this, but 11 is understood to be the irreducible number. It's considered a magical number. Um, so that, for example, a quote unquote angel number is like in time wise, like time of day wise, for example, is 1111. Uh, you know, so the position, the 11th position in the major arcana is important because it's exactly in the middle of or halfway through the journey in the major arcana. All right, so this is going to be a theme. So as we move along here, this is from the Druid Craft Hero. Although it's supposed to be, Celtic, i.e., Druidic, we have, again, it's a fairly traditional justice image. Um, Interestingly, we do have a feather here, which we'll get to the significance of the feather. I just noticed in this card the spider, um, and if we recall, the spider is reminds me of when we talked about the Wheel of Fortune, when we talked about the what's the Wheel of Fortune? Yes, the Wheel of Fortune. When we talked about the fates, right? The web of the spiders, like the web of the fates, or the web of life, if you will. For those of you familiar with Unitarian Universalist speak, right? Um, you use talk about the interconnected web of life in which of which we are all a part, right? So that kind of reminds me of the spider there. Admittedly, I did not read up on this particular card. Um, Sovereignty. This is from the Arthurian tarot. Um, and again, this idea that justice or law, if you will, doesn't just come from without. It comes from within. In fact, the biblical implication here is that, and there's a particular biblical verse about justice that Rachel Pollack quotes. And I don't have it in front of me, so I'm not going to attempt to quote it, but it's from Deuteronomy, and the essence of it is that to understand God, to be in the process, potential process of understanding God, one must seek justice. That seeking justice and seeking God are one and the same, right? So over here on this end, what we have, this is from the Good Tarot. And none of these women, none of these justice images are blindfolded. Yeah. Here we have an unbalanced scale, which is interesting. We also have the wings. Now, the wings are indicative of the goddess Ma'at, and we'll get more into her as we move along. Now, why this did like this on the PDF, I don't know, but I can always enlarge it. See, so here is Ma'at. Okay, Ma'at. Um, represented in several ways. And again, I've blown this image up, so it's kind of pixelated, and I apologize for that. But um, Ma'at is the Egyptian goddess of truth. Um, and she is the one whom Anubis, who's pictured on a number of the Wheel of Fortune cards, if you remember, Anubis takes the dead individual to Ma'at, and she actually weighs the heart of the individual against an ostrich feather. And um, this is the classical Egyptian image, and the idea is that in part that we can't, the idea, one of the goals of life and crossing over to the other side, or what we want to be at the end of life, is that we do not want to cross over with heavily burdened hearts, right? We want to have done that self-examination and to have released in conjunction with God, right? Or Goddess, and so forth. We want to have taken part in that healing, and so forth. And interestingly, uh, in this version here, we have someone who is, we don't know, I don't know, because I honestly didn't read up on this, but she may have just weighed the heart, or is about, the heart is obviously in the jar, right? but we don't know if she's just weighed the heart or she's about to weigh the heart. We don't know really the reason why she is, for her laughter here, or for her the laughter, honestly, in that particular image seems almost ironic to me. I mean, it doesn't. So that's a very interesting image. This is from the Journey into Egypt tarot, and what it says on the card. It's very pixelated here, but I believe that Justice is a correspondent to the first full moon in Libra, according to this. And this deck is very much uh, related to Egyptian astrology, is kind of worked into a system of Egyptian astrology. Okay. Here we go. All right. So, hi, CJ. We have now from our very familiar light seers. I love this. She's got a katana. She's actually forming the scales on a katana here. And we have the idea of as above, so below that we talked about. So the idea of once, and it also implies that self-examination. So once we have internally undergone this brutal, often brutal and painful self-examination of our past, and we understand our role in it and we can let go of it, then what the justice calls us to do on the other end of the scale is to take action, right? And then here we have Tabula Mundi, which is really great. And in the Carolian tradition, of which Tabula Mundi is a part, the justice card is associated with music. In part too, because as I said earlier, justice specifically calls for creative action. And justice again represents Libra, and Libra has to do with air, the art and air, and so on and so forth. So you get the idea of music. This image actually reminds me of my favorite song growing up as a teenager. So I actually wanted to play it. Hopefully you can see the screen.
Skating away on the thin
ice of the because the idea, and it does sort of correspond to the justice idea, because the idea is that having examined the past and released it, the action that we take on the other end of the scale is a new day. Or if we look at the Egyptian idea, if the weight of the heart and the weight of the ostrich feather balance out, what is beyond is afterlife. But this is the song is basically from a perspective of someone that really doesn't know what the new day is going to bring, and yet there's an incredible sense of optimism here. So anyway, play it. Oh, it's not. Oh yeah, okay.
Meanwhile, back in the year one, when you belonged to no one, you didn't stand a chance, son, if your pants were undone. 'cause you were bred for humanity and sold to society. One day you'll wake up in the present day, a million generations removed from expectations of being who you really want to be. Skating away, skating away, skating away on the thin ice of a new day. So as you push off from the shore, won't you turn your head once more and make your peace with everyone? For those who choose to stay, who will live this
Dude,
day to do the things they should have done. And as you cross the wilderness, spending in your emptiness, you feel you have to pray. Looking for a sign that the universal mind has written you into the passion play. Skating away, skating away, skating away on the thin ice of a new day. And as you cross the circle line, well, the asshole creeps behind. You're a rabbit on the run. And the silver splendors fly in the corner of your eye, shining in the setting sun. Well, do you ever get the feeling that the story's too damn real and then the present tense? More than everybody's on the stage, and it seems like you're the only person sitting in the audience. Skating away, skating away, skating away on the thin ice of a new day. Skating away, skating away, skating away.
All right. So actually in that song, I forgot to mention because I forgot. Yeah, the speaker of the song is dead, and it is actually a passage into the afterlife. So and the idea is that the past is dead, past is gone, and then he's skating into the new day. That new day being the afterlife. So it actually does. It actually does, correspond to this image on the Tabula Mundi card. She has the wings of Ma'at, so she's related to Ma'at. You see the ostrich feather, you've got the heart in the jar, the sword. Rather than holding up the sword, interestingly, she's skating on the sword. She's standing on the sword and on a path of music. I'm actually going to write M.M. Moline and ask her if she's heard of the song "Skating Away," and because this is just great here. But this one is a far more. This is the this is the corresponding deck to Tabula Mundi, and this is far more traditional Thoth, Aleister Crowley. You have the mask with the eye hole. Justice is masked but not blindfolded. You've got the scales extremely prominent because to Crowley, as Emma Moline points out in her book, the Tarot Deciphered, for Crowley, the goddess is not the scale, is not the scales. I mean, the goddess is the scales. The goddess is the scales, not the image of the woman here. So the scales take primary the primary fixture, the primary role here. Tabula Mundi is kind of a departure from Crowley in that way. You have the wings of Ma'at here. So the Ma'at, or the truth, or the balancing of the heart with the balancing of the heart with the ostrich feather ideas here. But here you have you have Libra in the scales, and I believe it's probably Citronian, because it's probably a Citronian image there. You've got both on this one as well, on the Tabula Mundi. But interestingly, the positioning of the sword is important here. This is very clearly, this is a Crowleyan thing here. This is the image. You're supposed to be reminiscent of the penis going into the vagina. The sword here is a penis. And it's the idea of because of this examination of the past, and then that quote unquote adjustment, as Crowley calls it, that adjustment of life and energy and so on and so forth. And with that adjustment, that creative action, coming out of that, there's a satisfaction involved with that, and that's depicted here as the penis joining with the vagina. So you don't get a strong vagina image in these cards, although you kind of do, because you could also say that she's inside a vagina, and you could say this is that she's the clitoris, or that this, and whatever this is here is the clitoris, and that she's actually inside a vagina here. But it's not as prominent as it has been in some other cards.
I love the one on the right.
Yeah. So yeah, I was hoping you'd be on for this, because this is totally, this is another card in the So Below that is very much CJ.
Very much.
So this is like our fourth or fifth card in the major arcana that specifically is like relates.
That's so me.
Yeah. Here we have our what is this called? This
Shadowscapes.
Shadowscapes. We have our Shadowscapes. I really like how she holds the feather here. I like how it kind of takes a prominent role in the card. And
give me 1 second there.
Okay.
So I didn't read up on this one. I didn't have time today.
That's fine. I didn't read up on it either.
But I will do it, because I usually read Shadowscapes because they have such a nice story in here.
Yeah. Denise, I don't know if you saw Denise's message. She has a headache really bad.
She toyed with the concept of giving her a sword of truth. The illustrator and author. But in the end, could not work the blade into a satisfactory composition. So instead, the feather ended up playing the role of a double symbol, the feather of Ma'at to weigh on the scales, and as a sword blade brandished at her chest. The initial version of Justice peered with far too much intensity and inquisitiveness at the soul, which is represented by the butterfly, for one who is blind and impartial. This was the sketch of a seeker, not a balancer. Nevertheless, I liked some of the motifs that presented themselves. The butterflies and the feather symbolically weighed up on her scales. I also determined that justice should be facing the viewer straight on, because originally the intense seeking looked like this. That was how she was going to do her card.
Okay. Yeah.
So she wanted her to be facing the viewer straight on, unwavering, and sure. Turned aside like this, she loses a great deal of her power and confidence. The next version took up where the discarded Lady Luck sketches left off, further exploring the concepts that had first come to light there. The inverted wing. So do you see the left wing over there?
Yeah.
It's inverted.
Mm-hmm.
The inverted wing was meant to represent her impartial weighing of both sides of what is presented. Butterflies have long been symbols of the human soul. Perhaps the most well-known association is from the ancient Greek myth of Eros and Psyche, whose name means both butterfly and soul. Psyche was a human maiden so beautiful that Eros, son of Aphrodite, fell in love with her. He knew this would madden his mother, so he spirited Psyche away in secret to be married. He took her to his palace, where she never glimpsed her husband, but was waited on by invisible servants. At night, under the cloak of darkness, her invisible husband came to her, and she grew to love him, even never seeing his face. Her sisters came to visit and were struck by jealousy for her obvious happiness, and they convinced Psyche that her mystery husband must be a monster afraid of the light. So they played upon her fears. One night she waited until after Eros was asleep to light a candle and gaze upon his face. She was instantly struck by his beauty and realized it was no monster she was married to, but the god Eros. A drop of candle wax slipped from her trembling hand and fell upon her face, fell upon his face. He shot awake and mournfully told her that now that she knew who he was, he could not stay with her. Left alone, Psyche then began a long process to regain the trust and love of Eros, working her way through the various trials that Aphrodite challenged her with.
Butterfly is also a symbol of Libra, which is the astrological sign of
The scales, yeah.
card. Yeah, yeah. That is, I mean, the shadowscape is always beautiful. I mean, it's a great card. If you look, and also too, like, is she bleeding from her midsection too?
Well, this seems short for what she normally does this time.
Yeah.
I don't mean the story, but the
Description, yeah.
I think I missed a page. Oh, I did. No, she's not bleeding from her midsection. For whatever reason, there is like a red like cloth wrapped around her waist, and then on top of the reddish cloth is an even redder cord that's tied. And then there's red edges all along the feather and the tip of the feather, and then the scales are hanging by a red ribbon. So hang on. Doesn't speak of the red at all.
So I think, because I was talking about the justice figure being clothed in red, earlier, and I think that's a reference to the emperor, because one of the things that Pollock points out is that the emperor is law outwardly, like in the outer world, whereas justice is law within.
Say that again, is what out and in?
Yeah, so the emperor is law outwardly, like
LAW?
outwardly, as in the
What
outer world,
outwardly?
is law.
LAW?
Correct. Law outwardly versus justice being inner law within. So just because somebody might be law abiding in the outer world doesn't necessarily mean they're abiding by the laws of their inner self, or vice versa. So this middle card, I really like.
Is that as above?
That is as above, and of course Mabon is the spring equinox, and so you have the balance. You have Persephone on the ground, and then you have I don't know, rather, I'm sorry, you have Demeter on the ground, and you have Persephone in the earth, or in Tartarus, and you have the the essentially the balance between when she can return in spring, right? So autumn is that balance, right? It's a beautiful card.
I'm with you.
Oh, I'm just looking at the card to see if there's something else.
Just the only thing I noticed was the cornucopia,
Right, and it's
but that's a Mabon celebration thing.
yeah. So, and the cornucopia represents harvest too. So everything is harvested, and it's but the knowledge to come is that we're about to enter winter, right? So it's kind of, so there's this kind of there's kind of a sorrowfulness to it as well, because we know we're about to enter a trying period, but at the same time, and so as far as the two figures, like there's still some time of separation left. So growing has ceased, and it's not going to return until spring. So Heather just texted she's not going to get on because she just got back from work and she's really
From her
excited.
class that she taught,
So,
yeah.
Yeah. So she's like doing what's pictured in the next card, probably. Taking her shoes off and rubbing her feet.
And now, so can you revisit, since I missed what you talked about, the red?
Oh, okay. So this is based on what Pollock said about the emperor representing sort of written law or law of the outer world, like, don't jaywalk and, so on and so forth, versus justice being the internal law that governs the self, right? That it has to do with understanding our role in the construction of our past and present. And ultimately the idea that when we pass from this world, we don't want to pass with burdened hearts. That's why that's the image of the Ma'at with the heart in the jar and the ostrich feather. If the heart is laden with guilt, then the heart is going to weigh more than then basically the heart is still stuck in the outer world. The heart's gonna weigh more than the ostrich feather. If the heart is free of guilt, if we've released our guilt and our burdens and so on and so forth, the idea is that if we understand how we've constructed our past, we can let go of it. If we come into that chamber of Ma'at, right, or that meeting with Ma'at, if we come into that without that guilt and so forth, then our heart will weigh less than the ostrich feather, and then we'll then cross to the afterlife. That's the idea. But the red is the color of the emperor, so that's that relationship to law, right? In relationship to the emperor via the color.
Because her shoes are red.
And also in that regard, it might be, I just thought of, Dorothy, there's no place like home. I mean, she's
right.
obviously
I thought of that too.
Yeah, she's obviously getting home, and she's taking on, what I love about her is the look on her face.
Oh, she's fucking beautiful. Oh, sorry, she's beautiful.
The look of accomplishment on her face.
Well, yeah, she's pleased.
She's home, but she's done what she's needed to do. And again, the other aspect to justice is not just examination of the past. That's one of the scales. The other scale is call to creative action.
So one side is past and then the other is creative action?
Yes. Once we've fully and brutally examined our past and understand our relationship to it and our role in creating it, the response to that is creative action.
You said examine our past, understand our relationship to it, and what?
Our role in creating it. Once we let our past go, the response on the other end of the scale is creative action. To use Aleister Crowley's term, the adjustment, after we've made the adjustment to our way of thinking, our way of perception, then we go into creative action. Crowley refers to the justice card or the adjustment card as the fool's dancing partner, which is also where you get the music notes and so on in the Tabula Mundi card. Because as I said earlier in the video, the Hebrew letter for the fool is an ox. The Hebrew letter for justice is lemed, which is ox goad. In other words, that which, so the justice is the catalyst for the continued journey of the fool, the continued movement of the fool. Because we're right in the middle of all the cards right now. If we take justice to be number 11, like we're right in the middle. And so Pollock points out, and also M.M. Moline and Chang, I believe that's her name, Chang, they point out that if you take the two Hebrew letters that make up that are the one for the fool and the one for justice, one of the combinations is El, as in Elohim, and so on and so forth. In other words, El meaning God, right, or Lord. The word the El is translated in the Hebrew Bible as Lord. Anytime you see Lord in the Hebrew Bible, it's the word El, right? And so, and it's also where we get Allah. It's actually the same word. It's just Allah is Arabic versus El being Hebrew. But so anyway, that's one of the possibilities of that combination. The other possibility.
Texting her.
Okay. The other possibility of that combination is nothingness or nothing, right? So in the justice card, in the relationship between the fool and the fool's confrontation of justice, you have the possibility of everything, i.e. God, and nothing, right?
I.e. what? God too?
Or yeah, so really, when the fool confronts the fool's past, the fool then has the opportunity to do everything and nothing at that point, right? It's like what,
God, I'm banging my head on the wall today.
this is what I was trying to convey to you earlier. And it also, I'll say some things after we get off the video, but you're going to be very proud of me for something I did today.
Wow, good. Yay. Woohoo!
It doesn't involve Jerry holes, although
I didn't think it did, but
okay.
I don't know how proud I can be of myself today.
I am extremely proud of you.
I'm not.
Here we have our wildwood. And the reason that the stag is emblematic of justice for that deck is because it talks about the deck, the card talks about, the reading of the card talks about balance. And so I guess the stag, and I didn't really pay attention when I looked at this, but I'm guessing that the stag is kind of holding space for that balance.
What deck is that? I thought that was my deck, but it's not. It's not.
Oh, it's not.
Oh, I'm on a different card. Hold on.
Yeah. The 11th card in the wildwood is strength.
It's called the woodward.
It's called the woodward. Yeah, but it's strength. If you read the
then do I have to go back to number 8?
Yeah.
Oh. Okay.
So he represents, and I didn't read it. So other than I saw the word balance, and I said, okay, this has to be the strength. This has to be the justice card.
Hi, everyone.
Hey.
My head is good. It's as good as it's going to get, I think.
Well, we're almost through the
I see that.
And you'll have to watch the video later and tell me how I did, because I did the whole like
He did it alone, Denise. I just got on too.
Oh.
Yeah, we had a guest, but honestly, I was talking about confrontation of the past and stuff relative to justice, and it might have made her uncomfortable. I don't know. But,
who was it?
Her name is Anastasia.
Are we recording?
Yes, we are. We are recording.
Hopefully, Anastasia, if you're going to watch this, apologies. Normally I'm on. What a day.
What a day.
We'll talk about that. We'll talk about that after the recording, so that
we'll get caught up.
Otherwise, names will have to be changed to protect the not innocent, right?
Exactly.
We're talking about justice. We're talking about the not innocent.
Oh no.
Although, as I've said multiple times, the theme, and I'm saying this to myself as well, because I've got a lot of work to do here in this area. But if we confront how and accept how we created our past, we can then become innocent by letting it go, and thereby, when we meet Ma'at, we're not forced to be devoured. And so,
Well, that's that forgiveness in order to be the forgiveness of the past.
yes,
That would
correct.
happen. And that sort of opening, and I think the justice card, so much of, I think, the popular interpretations of the justice card are about balance and equilibrium and legalities, and all of those are of course wrapped around it. But I really, really, really like Rachel Pollack's take on,
Oh yeah,
looked at the heart,
yeah, and it's
where it comes together. Yeah.
Rachel
yeah,
Pollack said what?
How in the justice card, it's the heart, it's the human heart that joins essentially the above and below, right? And that looking eyes wide open, um, being willing to accept how we've kind of created, the degree to which we've contributed to creating the life that we've, or the mistakes that we've made, or the injustice that we've created in the world, or the imbalance we've created in the world. And being able to forgive that, so that way we can move forward into sort of a better, or rebalancing of that world. So a much more, I think, it resonated with me, and I think maybe a little bit challenged some of my other kind of my traditional sort of understanding of card. So that's a good thing. That's a good thing. It stretched me in that way.
I really liked, her emphasis on creative action versus being reactive. I think
Right.
that really got to me. But because I listened to the chapter on from 78 degree of wisdom 3 times. I listened to the chapter in tarot wisdom, and then I listened to the chapter in which is not Pollock, but I listened to the chapter in tarot deciphered as well.
Mhm.
And in this idea of inner quote unquote law versus outer, justice is
Mhm.
inner, versus the emperor being outer, and so that was really cool.
Yeah.
CJ, what is the stat? What is the book telling us about the stag for the Wildwood?
Um, I mean, I think you got it all. It talks about the concept of forgiveness and reward are are not appropriate here. They are human ideas which have no reality in natural lore. One reaps what one has sown, just as right or generous action brings for fulfillment and peace. Greed and vengeful desire bring bitter, loneliness and disillusion. Balance will be maintained by the planet's ecosystem. The justice it dispenses is long lasting, and it is both merciful and irrevocable in its final conclusions. We are guests of the earth and not its masters, and like ill mannered children at a banquet offered freely by a generous and forgiving host, we have behaved badly and are in danger of spoiling the gathering for everyone else. Our thoughtless greed and selfishness have seriously disturbed the ecosystem. And then it goes on, but I'm going to stop there.
Okay, that is really awesome. Yeah,
I like that.
I did not read the middle card, but I can actually pull that up and I will read what Rachel Pollack says, because hers are always fascinating. I mean,
Like, wow.
um, let's see. Let me try to find that. Okay. She sits in the smoke. She whispers her secrets. She stares at her children. She throws the old stones. As Trump 11, justice sits in the center of the major arcana. It represents the truth of who we really are, of what we have made of our lives, and what we need to take responsibility for creating our own future. Self knowledge brings liberation from fear, guilt, and passivity. All of us contain qualities and memories we do not wish to acknowledge. Jung called this dark side of ourselves the shadow, and showed us how it can rule over our lives if we do not acknowledge it. Looking at this card, psychologist and tarot teacher Tana Deneen named her shadow woman, a fitting name for a figure halfway to shining woman. The image was inspired by the markings on a stone given to me by a student of Dr. Dean. This stone contained the hint of the face, which I brought out, and the suggestion of a child clinging to the woman's side. Sitting in her smoky, clinging cave, she also represents the oracle at Delphi in ancient Greece. Delphi was the most famous site of divination in the ancient world. People went there to discover the future, as people do with oracles. But as with tarot, some understood it more deeply, as a place to gain understanding. The temple of Apollo at Delphi bore the words, "Know yourself." We cannot advance in the higher levels of major arcana without coming to self-knowledge, signified in the card of the Fool. On top of the hill, we see two pillars reminiscent of the high priestess. Multi-patterned, they signify the variety of experience. A single eye shines between them. In justice, we look at ourselves with complete honesty. The person who came to Delphi purified himself in the spring before he approached the oracle. The river at the base of the card signifies memory and the truth, which flows and shifts like a river. The path resembles snakes on the high priestess. The original Delphic oracle contained serpents sacred to the goddess. The serpent's bite, along with powerful vapors, may have produced visions. The faces on either side of the cave derive from the Australian Aboriginal child germs. Faces painted on rocks to symbolize the souls of unborn children. Here, the figures on the left represent our past experience, which have set into the rock of our history, while the faces on the right signify our future possibilities, which have not yet emerged. The usual image of justice holds a scale, balance pans. Here, we see two pans on the ground. The pebbles inside and around them suggest divination by casting stones. We see 5 in each pan, the 4 physical elements plus the spirit of ether. The pans are in harmony with each other. Justice balances the past and future of our actions and actions of other people, opportunities and responsibility. The discarded stones teach us that the truth does not come easily. We cannot just believe whatever we want, but instead we must make a real assessment that may include discarding old beliefs. We must weigh our experiences, look carefully and honestly at our lives. This is the challenge of justice. So I really like how she blends the personal with the iconographic in her cards. And I'm not sure which bird that is. Is that a crow?
Looks like a crow.
You mean justice?
Yeah.
Oh, you mean in the other card?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's a crow.
Yeah.
Looks like a crow to me, but
Yeah.
crow, raven. I
Raven,
mean,
yeah. And oh, it's got to be a raven. You know why?
yeah, because of the connection between the two worlds.
And of course, I should have. I already showed a video tonight too, Denise. I mean, we're doing multimedia here. I should have pulled up Edgar Allan Poe's The Raven, because where does the raven land? On the bust of Pallas. Who is Pallas? Athena, who's the goddess of Libra that we saw in the card that Denise made our banner with
Yes.
tonight.
Yes.
Yes. So
Oh.
it's definitely a raven.
Mhm.
So everybody watching this should go look up on YouTube and see Homer Simpson's version of the Raven, because it's classic. Everybody go, that's yeah. But
That's awesome.
it's when I used to teach poetry every semester, I would play Bart Simpson reading the Raven. But okay,
Great.
should have queued that up to show on the video. But
And the raven lands. How is Athena?
so the
Mhm.
so the Raven in the poem
Right.
lands
Lands on the bust of
bust of
Pallas.
Pallas, her name is Pallas Athena, right? So it lands on Athena, Athena being the goddess of wisdom, and of course, the raven says nevermore, and of course, the idea being is that the raven is the fulcrum between the past and the future, right? In that statement, because what the speaker wants to know in that poem is there an afterlife, right? And the raven won't give a straight answer, just says nevermore, right? That's pretty cool. And of course, also you get the raven in is as in Odin, right? The two Odin's two ravens, thought and memory, Hunan and Munan, and you have, of course, Hecate's ravens, and so on. I mean, the ravens show up as birds of creative action, right? Magical.
Well, and they're like harbingers, messengers, portals between us here in the physical world and the spirit world and the divine and what it wants us to know. That's one of my spirit animals, and that's what I've learned about them personally.
That's cool. Also, the animal, the ravens are so smart, supposedly, that they get bored and they bang their heads on up against walls because they're bored.
That's true. That's true, because I've read that.
So
there was not far from where I live, off of Bandera, I had to go and take my pup over to the vet over at PetSmart, and it was early in the morning, and this was deep in the middle of the pandemic. I think it was like September, something like that. I guess we're still deep in the middle of the pandemic, but anyway, I drive in, and I'm driving in the parking lot, and it's curbside service, and I'm circling around. I haven't been to this one, so I'm kind of like looking around, and what swoops out of the sky is this raven. This huge raven just sort of swoops in front of me, right in front of my car, and then swoops the other way, and then sort of lands, I don't know, 300, 400, 500 feet away from me, and just lands there and just hangs out. It was the coolest thing ever, right? I mean, it's very rare that I see a raven. Like, you'll see a raven in the city, and I'm kind of suburbish, so you can still see them. But I mean, I think it's really, really such a cool thing. I hadn't seen a raven in over a decade, at least. Yeah, there's a pair of ravens on the NLC campus, right? Because there is a really nice area undeveloped around the campus. It's on the campus, right? So very woodsy. There's a herd of deer and foxes and coyotes and all kinds of natural wildlife. And So it had been a really long time. It was a really neat thing. And I felt like when that happened, I felt particularly, it just felt like a blessing. Felt like a blessing to be able to engage that. That's really cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah. It was neat.
Then of course you have in DC Comics, you have Raven, who is this awesome, sort of powerful, brooding teenage girl figure who just wants to be cool and everything, but she's got this horrible past that she has to contend with, from which she gets her power. And so a lot of the Perez run on Teen Titans in the 80s had a lot to do with Raven confronting her past. Anyway, that's very nerdy reference to George Perez and the Teen Titans and Raven. So Heather, who had to work tonight,
Oh my God, is that the TV one?
sent, this is not the TV one. This is the Housewife Tarot. I just thought that was hilarious.
That
That
is
is
hilarious.
So I put that in,
That's
even
great.
though it doesn't correspond with any of the stuff we've been talking about. It's pretty freaking funny.
It is really funny.
And then Heather took some photos of her cards that she sent me this morning because she knew she was going to have to work. So I included those as well. This is her favorite deck, the Beautiful Creatures. And we've got Equilibrium, which conveys that idea. I'm not sure what these decks are, but I like the movement.
Isn't that one the one that you have, Denise? This one up in the corner, the upper right? The intuitive witch or something? Or the something you showed it last week?
Is it the
Oh, the Modern Witch? I don't think so.
No, the other one. The other one you showed with that one.
oh, the heart? No, well,
Yes, that one.
the True Heart, that was what Heather showed. It could be, this could be the True Heart.
Oh,
Is,
okay.
is that the true heart?
It could be. And then here she's standing on the sword and looks
Well,
like
that's the second time we've seen that tonight with
Looks like-
Tabula Mundi.
yes, we saw this with Tabula Mundi as well. And the sword, Pollock points out, there's only 3 cards traditionally that have the upright sword: Queen of Swords, Ace of Swords, and Justice. All of which the sword is basically the power of the mind. And of course in Crowley the sword is in that particular card, you missed it, Denise. The sword is a penis being inserted in the vagina. Crowley was very adamant about that. And then here we have, looks like we've got the it looks like there's ladybug. Is there a ladybug in the
In where?
in this one at the bottom here? There's like a ladybug in the scale, and like another. I don't know what deck that is, but it's kind
I
of
can't see it, but yeah.
I can't really
kinda
tell.
cool.
It's a little too small for me to see, but okay, yeah.
I don't know what
They look like baby dragons from the dragons on the side.
it could be. Yo, you're right.
Oh,
Yeah,
little
I bet
baby
that's what it
dragons?
is. Yeah. And here on this one, like her hands looks like they're handcuffed to the scale.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Which is-
and I don't think her face looks very pleasant either.
No, it doesn't.
No.
It really, that's a
Like that card, I'm not liking that much.
Mm.
Like it's like she is being forced
right. Yeah, that's exactly what it looks like.
to hold a position that she is not comfortable with.
Doesn't like, and if you and like if you're familiar with like
Well, and there's
torture
no way that
technique.
she can't. There's no
Yeah.
way if she were to move her arms out of that position that she wouldn't tilt the scale one way or the other.
Right. and so they're kind of, yeah, so she's, it almost reminds me of a crucifixion or like a,
Yeah.
Mhm.
or if you're familiar with like torture techniques where people
Yeah.
under, yeah, that's disturbing. I mean,
It
and
is.
it's kind of deceptive because you have the pink sky and like it's,
Right.
wow, I don't know what deck that is. That's
Interesting.
kind of fascinating. Let's see. I think, let me,
Oh, yeah. I was going to say, here's from the little kawaii.
yeah, and so of course some of these are here's Mother Peace, which I'm pretty sure that's Mother Peace or the Goddess deck or something.
I like the one in the upper left, which we now can't see because you scrolled down. Can you enlarge that a little?
I can
Like
try,
you
but
did a minute ago?
It's gonna pixelate it.
That's okay.
Yeah.
That's just really pretty. And I like that she's flanked by the two Black
Two
Panthers or cats or whatever.
Panthers. Yeah, Panthers. Yeah.
And the robe is just gorgeous. It's gorgeous. Like, I'd love to know what deck that is.
Yeah. This, yeah, I don't know.
That's a gorgeous card.
I'll have to ask Heather. Now I'll show you the card I like, and I'll explain why. I don't like looking at it pixelated, so I'm gonna
Okay.
pull it back down. This card here is from my favorite deck ever, which is I don't have anymore, and is no longer produced. And if you try to buy it, it's like $100 minimum. It's Ellen Cannon Reed's Witch's Tarot, and the reason why I like this tarot, this is a deck I used as a kid, as a teenager, almost exclusively. And the reason why I liked it is because it combines pagan imagery with hardcore Kabbalah imagery. And I was talking to Heather about it, and she's like, that's my favorite. She's like, that's the only deck I read with except for Rider Waite. And she said, that's the first deck I got with my mom when I was a kid. She's like, so we bonded over Ellen Cannon Reed. This morning we were talking. And so, in fact, she and I may be nerds and listen to the same Kabbalah book because she wants to learn about Kabbalah.
Who, you and your mom?
No, me and Heather.
Heather.
Oh.
From our group, the one that joins us.
Yeah.
Because she said, well, I'm part Jewish, so I really should know that stuff. But so we may read the Chicken Kabbalah, which is like a semi-comedy Kabbalah book.
The Chicken Kabbalah?
Chicken Kabbalah. It's
I heard you right then. Okay.
Yeah. But so I've actually been pulling cards from the Kawaii, and I really like the interpretations that it gives. They're terse, but they're very to the point. I really kind of like it. Justice is unmoved by emotional appeal, cold but undeniably fair. That's kind of what CJ was talking about with the stag. Justice is about using reason, i.e., the sword, right, to reach balance. Excess in any direction will always lead to a feeling of incompleteness. To make the best decision in this situation, put aside your wants and ask yourself, what have you been needing?
Yeah. I like that.
They give like really nice statements like that in the Kawaii deck. And to think like being given this as like a preteen, that's some like heavy personal work. If you're that'd be really awesome because imagine that young girl or young boy, at 15 after having worked with the tech for a few years. That's potentially pretty awesome. You've got yours.
Here's got the book, and this is a summary of a couple of paragraphs. There's actually 3 short paragraphs.
Oh, okay.
Description, and so it starts out with justice is unmoved by emotional appeal, cold but undeniably fair. Just as about using reason to reach balance. As card 11, this is the first of the next cards of the major arcana and the shift from the physical world to the spiritual world. Justice stands for rationality in the name of what's best for the situation. And then after the wonder of the wheel of fortune, the fool begins to wonder about cause and effect. The fool feels guilty about the wrongdoings of her past and looks for a way to balance the scales. Stern justice implores the fool to dedicate just time to all of the aspects of herself. Justice helps the fool realize that being objective can help you make the best decisions. If this card appears in a reading, it means a change must be made to reach equilibrium in your life. To make the best decision in this situation, put aside your wants and ask yourself what you have been needing. Excess in any direction will always lead to a feeling of incompleteness. This card can also be a signal to accept responsibility and do what needs to be done. So a little
That's,
bit of that extra.
yeah,
Justice is a really I want to say, I mean, it's like no holds barred, right? I mean, it's just out and and that invitation, right, to really go in and to be responsible for that which you have done to help create the circumstance and situation. That takes some time though, right? I mean,
right.
as I'm sitting back and I'm thinking about it, not anybody can just jump into that usually unless you're pretty seasoned, right?
Yeah,
Unless you're
yeah.
willing to kind of move into that space. Sometimes it takes a little while. It takes some healing to be able to get there. But I also think that's the continuation of the healing, right? The
Mhm.
continuity of that is to move into that space with time. And to know that it's necessary, right? So it becomes it becomes the goal.
Yeah, and
Right.
if you recall, in Pollock, she associates a biblical quote with justice as well, and the summary of it, I can't remember the exact quote because I'm terrible at that stuff. You
I
got it?
read it
You
today.
got it? Okay, read it to us.
um, justice shall you pursue. And I don't remember that. And it doesn't tell us what book it's from.
It's Deuteronomy something. It maybe in 78 degrees she tells us
But she said it was in that it was at church that morning. And the Bible passage said, justice shall you pursue. And it didn't. And then she said, Deuteronomy is the last of the 5 books of Moses, of the Torah.
Yeah, I think it's
And
78
she
degrees.
said that in those 5 books, they never repeat the words, but it was repeated that time in Deuteronomy for emphasis.
Let me pull up 78 degrees.
Because to repeat is about emphasis, right?
Emphasis, and it's vital. We must pursue it with passion. When God wants us to hear something, he says it twice, and saying it twice is calling something into being like a spell.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Can't find my freaking Kindle app here. Okay, here we go. All right, here we are. Justice.
Why does it look like half my cards are missing?
While Kurt is
Not seeing it actually.
pulling that up, this is from The Modern Witch.
Oh, pretty.
Yeah, this little deck is really it's just a fun deck, right?
Yeah, that's cute. That's actually kind of cute to me.
It's cute. It's very youthful, obviously, right? The Modern Witch, it's a very youthful deck. So I just, think teenager, right?
Mhm.
Teen witch kind of, um,
Yeah.
the teen witch kind of idea. And then of course I have the Justice card, the little kawaii. And then here's from the Everyday Enchantment Tarot. We looked at this last week too. But here she is listening to both of these folks going off when they're really fine, right? They've had an accident in the back. They're really fine. They're okay. They're just pissed at one another. And these imps in each corner, on each side is egging on the two men arguing. And then you can't see it because it's so fine there, but there are wasps over each of their heads.
Oh, well.
Where are the imps?
They're
Oh,
at
they're
the
down at the bottom.
yeah.
I see
Yeah,
them.
they're
I
right
see them.
there.
I
So
see
you
them.
see them now. And then there is the peace.
I thought the wasps were the imps.
Yeah, no, the wasps are flying above their heads, and then in the back there's the peace dove, and represents the peace that she brings to the situation. But I sat back and I looked at this card, and I read the description, and I thought to myself, oh gosh, as chair, how many times do you have to sit and listen? And you have to be the most impartial one in the room. So this is how I understood that aspect of justice. This kind of brought that home for me.
So
But
here's the biblical quote justice so you pursue that you may thrive and occupy the land the eternal Yahweh your God has given to you. It's Deuteronomy 16:20. And
Deuteronomy 16:20.
yeah, and she actually puts Yade Vade or Yahweh, because she's Kabbalistic. But the idea being to pursue justice, to seek justice, and to seek God are exactly the same. That you cannot seek God without seeking justice.
That you cannot seek God with.
And
Y'all, God, you can't seek God.
And interestingly enough, just as an aside, the governor of New Jersey cited social justice as the impetus for the legalization of weed in the state of New Jersey.
Say that one more time.
The governor of New Jersey cited social justice as the impetus for legalization of weed in the state, because weed was just legalized in New Jersey as a matter, as they put it, as a matter of social justice. Because,
not that I disagree, but how did he connect?
I didn't.
Yeah, can you please do that for us?
I didn't see the interview, but I imagine that it has to do with folks, because marijuana is a Schedule I drug on the same level, and federally is a Schedule I on the same level as cocaine and heroin, meaning that someone could be in prison for life for selling pot.
Yes, now that makes sense.
And so, yes, and that's the conundrum, has been the conundrum since 1994 with the passage of the Clinton crime bill.
Yeah.
Which is responsible for imprisoning more African Americans and Latinx folks than any law since Jim Crow. So, and ironically, President Biden was a co-author of that. Now he's come out now and said that that was not a good idea, but as we know, that the Clintons would not have been elected in the early 90s had they not pushed, being hard on crime, because that's the only way that they were able to beat out, Republicans, because our government is incredibly draconian and totalitarian, has been going that direction since Richard Nixon. But anyway, with a brief respite under Mr. Jimmy Carter, who in very much ways is the fool, which is why, he's still around. He's still kicking it. So
Still around and still doing good in the world.
Yep.
Um,
But yeah, and I can guarantee you that Jimmy Carter, incidentally, a devout Christian man, believes that social justice and justice is the same, is intrinsic into seeking God. I can guarantee you that Jimmy Carter in fact believes that.
So I guess what I'm trying to wrap my brain around right now personally with this is, when we talk about justice and all of this conversation we're all having right now, what are we basing justice on? Laws that man made, laws that never governed any civilization before ours? That doesn't mean that in Egypt, the people were any less in communion with God, as it were.
Correct. And in fact, there's a lot of
So
evidence.
do you see, this is my whole terrible struggle, the conundrum of, I can't do this. I come here because I love this. And this is in one the same. And you can't do this because it's not in line with justice, therefore you're not in line with God. But in all these ancient civilizations, everybody was so much more in line with God, and they were doing this.
Well, you've also got to,
and like that's in every part of my life right now.
You've got to realize too that epic and scripture, blah 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 blah, those are generally always in almost every civilization written by the conservatives or compiled by the conservatives. Hence, you have the role of Asaroth and so forth taken out or highly diminished and or vilified in the Hebrew Bible and so forth, because what you have is a bunch of people compiling it who were arguing for a very, very conservative view of the Yahwistic religion. It's in the same thing actually in the New Testament. It's a very pro-Roman government.
So
religion.
I'm trying to reconcile all of this.
So according to Pollock, So according to Pollock, when we're talking about justice, we are talking about that law that governs within, and according to and she actually cites the Wiccan Rede, which is actually derived from Aleister Crowley. Aleister Crowley says, love is the law, do what you will. So the law is love. The law, the inner law, right, is love. And when we are blind, when we are unjust, right, in terms of the justice card, when we are unjust is when we turn away from love. That is injustice. So, and remember, Pollock makes the distinction, right, between the emperor and justice. The emperor is the outer law, and again, the emperor is the society, the governing of society, right? And remember, when we talked about the emperor, we talked about at best, in the emperor's best form, you're talking about a servant leader. You're talking about, but the emperor still is operating in that outward law. Justice ultimately is operating on the basis of love, right? That's why.
Are you listening to all of this, Kurt?
Yes, that's why Pollock is saying that the justice first asks us to brutally evaluate our past. In justice is impartial in the sense that justice is showing us what our past is, and our responsibility, and how fucked up we've made our past, right? But we have constructed it one way or other. And the point that I made before everybody got on is that, you know, obviously if we are assaulted, or if we're, you know, whatever, if we've been molested, or if we're born into poverty, whatever it may be, we're not responsible for that in that sense, but we're responsible for whether or not we choose to confront it, right? We're responsible for whether or not we choose to confront it and you know, deal with it, be that through therapy or however. We're responsible for that, you know. But we're not responsible if, you know, we're assaulted, or you know, we're born into war, or we have this and this and this happen, you know. We're not responsible for that. But so but we are responsible for how if we're responsible for whether we allow that to rule our lives, right? If to dictate our present and then our future. So the idea is that we, from a place of love, look at how we have created our past, and what tendencies, what mechanisms have caused us to create our past in that way. And then once we see that, we can then let go of it. And once we let go of it from a place of love, we then take creative action to manifest that love, right? But Pollock clearly says that, Pollock clearly quotes the Rick and Weed, i.e., harm none, do what you will. And the basis of that statement is love, i.e., you can do, you know, you can express your love.
Well, and harm that also means yourself, right?
Don't exactly, absolutely. Absolutely. The none includes yourself. Absolutely.
Right. It includes that as well. And so, I mean, I think that has to, sometimes we forget that drops out of that.
Right. Absolutely includes yourself. And then, you know, Pollock goes on to quote Crowley in the Book of the Law, love is the law. Love falls under, you know, so, and she points out, and Crowleyans would point this out as well, that harming people, Crowley's not concerned with whether you harm people or not. Crowley's just concerned with love being the law. So, but again, if you take love for love, you are not going to harm other people. You're not going to harm yourself in the expression of the deepest love, right?
Yeah.
I'm saying all this to myself.
I mean, when you say this, I mean, I think it's true. I mean, I think if we follow that, right, you take that and you apply that to not harm yourself, sometimes means you have to give up that which is painful. You don't want to give it up, but it's painful. It's hard. It's hard to do that, regardless of what that is, right? I mean, we
also have to try our best to give up our addictive illusions that we have in life, and that's very hard. I say this as an Aquarius, and Aquariuses are the most prone to addiction of any sign, whether it be alcohol, whether it be sex, whether it be you know, unhealthy connections to some, you know, whatever. But Aquariuses are the most prone to that.
I have a fairly highly addicted brother who's an Aries. And then if you have it in systems within your family, right, within your family,
of course.
And so you kind of learn to cope by developing an addictive tendencies.
Yeah. There's a reason that I was never that I never took heroin, or that I never took speed.
Yeah, there's
there's a very serious reason for that. You know, there's a reason that I don't play video games. There's a reason, because I would be that person that's like, you know, and that's, you know, I could very easily just be sucked into that, you know,
and it'd be hard to get done. You know, sort of like this. It's interesting also, I mean, because of the ways that we develop self-soothing, right? Coping, right? Certain types of self-soothing like sitting back and saying, oh, you're stressed out right now. It's really okay to go and have a piece of blah, blah, eat this thing or drink this thing to soothe
Or
yourself.
let's go have a cigarette. Woohoo!
Yeah, I mean, whatever it is, right? I mean, it's just that thing where you're like, oh man, it takes on so many different forms. But in the long run, in the largest, I think the biggest picture, you see how that's not really necessarily a form of self-love or
Right.
from a place of love. It's I think it's coming from sort of a perhaps just that need to kind of calm down, center, and it's really stuffing down, I think, the emotions rather than feeling the set of uncomfortable emotions that come along with that. Yeah. It is difficult, I think, to strip away all of the socialized cultural practices that we have developed, that we've inherited and have developed. And so many of us move through those unexamined. We don't think about them, right? We don't think much about them, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I already gave a whole mini lecture on that at the beginning of the video.
Yeah. Okay.
but yeah.
Yeah.
So I was just thinking about the justice and that balance, in relationship to Om, the Omkara, because the Omkara, the idea is Om, the creator, preserver, and destroyer together in those syllables, and the idea is that the Om, is absence of is kind of is God in sound, is divinity in sound, but it doesn't have attributes like, say, Lord Ganesha would have attributes, or it's a very, and the saying go, and so it's the saying go, I read when one place, if all else fails, just chant Om, but it's that idea of it's that idea of just unadulterated, truth in a way, or presence in a way. But
Puppy,
So I'll have to watch the beginning of the video.
yeah, that will give me an impetus to actually post it in a reasonable.
Please,
Because Heather
please.
really wants to watch it also. Hi, is that Jasper or
This
Jingle?
This is Jasper.
Hi, Jasper.
Hi, Jasper.
Hi, Jasper.
This
He
is awesome.
he drinks coffee. Look at his stained lips.
You drink coffee?
He's a Starbucks
Do
kitty.
you want some Jerry's? You can have a bunch of Jerry's.
No, that's Jingle. But see his stains on his lips?
Yeah.
Yeah. He likes coffee.
He's a coffee drinker.
All right. So does
Are
anyone?
we ready to turn off the recording?
Yeah. Does anyone else have anything? Jasper, do you have anything to say about justice?
No.
He says, "I'm a cat. I am justice."
He's done. He laid down.
Yeah, he said, "I am justice." That's all you need to know. Hi, buddy.
Oh my God, how cute.
All right. So
Oski.
this has been our discussion on justice. Join us soon for The Hangman is next, right?
Yeah.
The Hanged Man. Okay.
Woo.
Signing off. Let me see. Where's our recording?
Seriously, the Hanged Man is next. Are you not like